Valerie, welcome to Let's Talk Quality. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Hamish. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, yeah. It's we were just saying before, it's been 3 years since I set up the business, 3 years since I think we first spoke. So time flies. Give the listeners just a really quick, sort of very high level overview of who you are and what your current role is, and then we'll work back after that.
Okay. I'm Valerie Brown. Uh, I'm a quality professional. I started my career in the laboratory and sort of got into quality assurance by accident. Have been in roles with contract development manufacturing organizations as well as innovator companies. And currently, I am the head of global quality assurance and compliance with Thermo Fisher Scientific in their clinical research group.
hmm Okay, so how you mentioned now you sort of fell into it, and how did you end up getting into quality?
So I worked in the laboratory. I worked in in endocrine in a pharmacokinetic laboratory years and years ago. And I was asked to be a scribe for an FDA inspection. And the day of the inspection, the host fell ill, so I ended up having to host the inspection at the ripe old age of like 22. I had no
Right. Okay.
idea that
Wow.
this was something I should have been afraid of or said no to. But the inspection went well. We did get observations, and of course, I was challenged also with responding to the observations and getting people to write the responses, put the corrective measures in place. And someone said, "Hey, it looks like you got a knack for this." But at that time, I was like, "No, I didn't. I didn't really want to do that. I still wanted to be in the laboratory and then move on to manufacturing." So I did took another job as the head of a lab for a diagnostic laboratory, but it
hmm
did have some quality aspects because we were inspected by the state and as well as by the joint commissions of hospitals. And then I was recruited to be the head of quality for a small biotech. And then it was quality for not just the laboratory, but also for manufacturing, as well as for clinical research. So that was very eye opening. They took a risk on me. I took a chance in doing that, and I really liked it because it's a lot of problem solving, looking at things from end to end in terms of things coming from non-clinical tox studies to clinical, the manufacturing aspects of IMP to commercial product, and of course all the testing that's involved there. So it was great. And then of course I went to work for a contract developing manufacturing organization where you're really on the other side of the table. So you're looking at you know thin margins, everything's quick and fast, and you're servicing 30, 40 different biopharma and biotech clients. But what they all have the one thing in common is that you need to be compliant with the regulations. So that was very it gives you that full sense of the challenges on each side. And then, of course, I went back to the innovator side and certainly had a career at Gilead Sciences, starting in working with API, then with finished dosage forms, sterile products, med devices, antibody drug conjugates, and then left there and now with Thermo Fisher working in clinical research. So basically, full circle, coming back to
Yeah.
the CRO space, with working with a lot of different, biopharm and, biotech clients, and really feeling close to the patient, being able to look at things, from a patient centric standpoint, that everything we do, there's a patient waiting at the end for that. So it's rewarding.
Yeah, awesome. So you've come full circle. What were the signs in your early days that whoever it was saw in you that made them feel that you would be good at this? And what were the early signs that showed up that maybe indicate that you might become a great or a good leader in the future?
Well, I think, like I said, working in that laboratory, it was more or less like being a problem solver, just, understanding that here's an issue that we had. At that time, we did have a quality assurance organization. So you had to write reports. You submitted it to them. They came back with, my reports were bleeding red because they had all red line things and you didn't put this in, you didn't do this. I took that feedback seriously and certainly improved on my report writing. But it was more or less, like I said, just looking at it, the problems at hand, not so much as checking a box, but like, here's a problem that we have to solve. how do we do this? I mean, we had a problem in terms of how we do an elution for
Yeah.
an endocrine drug,
Yeah. Yeah.
and just being able to work that. And I think that was something that my senior leader saw in me, that I just wanted to solve the problems and come up with a great result. And sometimes it would take me. I've been in the lab all night long,
Mm.
Hamish, just
Yeah.
trying to get things done.
Yeah.
But I think that's what they saw in me.
You worked hard. You had an eye for problem solving in the early days. What about you as a leader? How would you describe yourself now as a quality leader?
I'm more of a servant leader, so I'm, there to really help my team, aspire to be the best that they can be, and to help them get to their next level. But I lead by example. There's nothing that I don't do that I would ask them to do. You're that leader that listens. That you need to really, kind of have your ear to the ground and just what people are, really saying, because sometimes what they say and what they're doing are two different things, and being able to act upon that so that you can get a positive outcome. And when I say that, is really leading with that empathy, understanding that, at some point in your career, you were in that same spot, that,
Yeah.
and that you wanted someone to kind of hear you out, and understand where you're coming from. I mean, we have a lot of great individuals who, work really hard every day, but it's more or less teaching them, not just it's not just working really hard, I mean, really busy, but really being effective and impactful, and really being able to drive to, some positive results. So
Mm.
I think as a leader, you need to do that. You get to be able to influence people, not because you're who you are, but because they believe in what you're saying, and that you can show them that you can, this is the way to go.
Those some of those skills there. How did they develop? How did they show up over the course of your career? You obviously didn't just become this servient star leader. What were the experiences throughout your career, or the challenges that you went through that made you that type of leader that you are now?
Well, I think, sometimes it's some of the things that you do that, maybe didn't work out so well. Sometimes it's some of the, some failures. I think one example I can think about is working for a contract development manufacturing organization. We were in the process of trying to turn that organization from, chemical manufacturing to certainly fine chemicals. So you're looking at, pharmaceutical active ingredients and, the regulatory starting materials.
Mm.
But you're also dealing with the workforce who they're used to just working and just getting things done, and really not, having to adhere to regulations, or, SOPs, or protocols, and things like that. So in order to influence these individuals to certainly be compliant that way, because now we're in a regulated environment, we're going to be inspected by health authorities, helping them to understand the importance of what they were doing. And the way that I went about that was not just, saying this is what we need to do because the FDA requires it or the EMA requires it, but then showing them that what we do matters for patients. The drug you're making could be a drug your mom takes, your dad takes, your sister takes. And then we also had some patients come in, from that viewpoint, to talk about, the drugs that we made, the actives that we were making, and how it helped them or saved their life. So it's that sort of thing. It's really kind of, having the data to support what you're saying. It's like, people want to trust you, but they want to certainly be able to trust you. And then,
Yeah.
and what's that trust based on?
Yeah.
It's going
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
based on data, based on, some verification and things like that. So I think that's one example in terms of just trying to get people, like I said, not just try to influence them because you're who you are, but just to show them the importance of, why we do what we do and why we show up every day.
So let's just sort of zoom out a bit. I guess in terms of your career, then you spent a number of years as at Gilead. You were SVP of quality there towards the end, and you've now been with Thermo for 18 months. Back into the CRO world, How would you, if you were to zoom out a bit, how would you, as we sort of at the start of 2026, how do you view the overall life science, pharma, and biotech industry now? Do you feel like it's in what sort of space do you feel like it's in right now?
Wow. It's in a very complex space,
Yeah.
to be fair. But I think it's at a turning point, in terms of some of the therapies that are coming out, some of the companies that are, coming about, and what they're
Yeah.
bringing to bear. and then a lot of the innovator companies that are actually starting to now manufacture back here, in the
Yeah.
US. So it's a different feel to it now in terms of where we're going and what we're doing in this
Mm.
space. So, from where I sit in the clinical research space, you see a lot of innovators in the oncology field, and there's some great advancements that are happening. And then, of course, there's the other drugs like the obesity drugs and some of the cardiovascular drugs and inflammation, and of course antivirals. So it's a different space, if you will. But I don't know. I think we're still guided by the regulatory authorities and what they're looking for. So
Mm.
that's ever changing. But
That's it.
I think we're in a good spot though.
Yeah. So 18 months into your role now, let's talk about coming into a global role with Thermo Fisher, um, on the clinical side. So working on the CRO side. Take us back to the beginning of your role when you came in. Tell us, just paint a picture for what your organization looked like from a quality standpoint, what your remit was, and what your sort of, your first 90 days, what did it look like?
Well, okay. So in this role, you really kind of hit the ground running, right? The organization from the quality organization was, it was a good organization, but it was a bit fragmented. So there were silos of people doing different things. So one of the things that we did as an organization first was to really come together to break down those silos and to really have some very distinct pillars, if you will, but also have the collaboration and connective with the operations group. So making sure that we were connected with ClinOps, we're connected with project delivery, we're connected with medical monitoring, we're connected with commercial, we're connected with digital strategy, we're connected with strategic business solutions, so that there's a comprehensive
Mm.
way for quality to really work. And I think over the course of a year, we were able to reorganize to sort of realign ourselves to be, supportive of the business so that we move at the speed of business and that we have a seat at the table, but not just a seat at the table, but we're key partners. We're like a preferred partner in terms of quality, making sure that
Yeah.
not just with our internal clients, but also with our external clients.
When leaders come into a strategic role like yourself, it's very much listening and learning and figuring out where the gaps are, or what needs to be changed. Was that the case? Was it just talking to people, understanding where the challenges are, and sort of winning trust?
Absolutely. The first 90 days, it is listening. Or even more than that. I mean, you never stop listening, but there's a way to understand like what's working, what's not working. Basically, what do we need to continue to do? What do we need to stop doing? What should we start doing? And I think it's more or less, like I said, understanding what the vision is of the enterprise, and then of course what's the vision of your business in clinical research, and then being able to put that into motion. So when you come into a role like this, it's like I said, it is understanding that vision, but also because I do sit on that leadership team, you're kind of helping craft that vision too. Like, what do we want to be in 2030? What's our 2030 vision? And then what's the roadmap to get there? What are we going to do, next year, the year after, and to accomplish that? From my perspective, um, is really talking to individuals who've been there and listening to their guidance, because it's not about coming in and trying to put your stamp on something, but it's to really build on what's worked before and to even help take it to the next level to really get it to where it needs to be. And in that vein, I wasn't the only leader that was brought in. There were other leaders too. Like we had a leader come in for digital strategy and just looking at how do we utilize digital tools like AI, machine learning, natural language processing to really gain efficiencies, help reduce costs for our sponsors, and to help them get to the market faster. So get their product to the market faster. So it's all of those things in terms of and then making sure we have a quality organization who's in lockstep with those individuals from an oversight perspective, but
Yeah.
also in terms of you know how are we governing our processes and procedures, and then how are we working, with our sponsors, because we have that quality to quality interface with those sponsor companies. Also, there's a shared or tiered accountability in terms of any inspections that happen, different assessments and evaluations by health authorities. So you have to consider it as well.
What are the main differences from going into a role like, where you're at Gilead, or a larger organization on the sponsor side versus the CRO side? How does that approach differ?
It's different because you got like 100 people telling you what to do. You have
Yeah,
different people telling you, I want it this way. And I think that having been on the innovator side, I've been in that seat where you're working with contract, organizations, and you really want something more bespoke, right? You want something that's going to be tailored to what I do and what my processes are and my procedures. But what they really want, what you really find out is that, everyone needs to comply with the regulations. Everyone needs to abide by the laws. Everyone needs to be compliant with their own internal procedures and their processes. And there may be times where there's some disagreements, or maybe you may not agree. But, we do certainly understand that in the end, as a contract manufacturer, as a contract organization, it's a sponsor's decision. That's the final decision. So
mm,
that's a little bit different in terms of that. But there's a lot more collaboration and partnering, and you find a lot of the sponsors just want to have a partner. You're not necessarily an extension of their quality, but you're a
yeah,
partner. You're the ones that can give them advice and counsel, because you're sitting in a seat where you can see things, a purview of hundreds of different sponsors and experiences
yeah.
that have happened. So you can certainly give them the benefit of that.
Do you think there's a different skill set or type of person that can come in and do the role that you're doing in a CRO if they haven't, versus the innovator side? Um, do you need to have certain aspects of, whether that's collaboration, communication? I don't know, but are there any particular skill sets that become more important when you're stepping into the CRO role that you're doing?
I think relationship management is key, right? It's being able to, how you communicate with individuals. Having some thick skin is helpful because because there's going to be times where you're going to have to make some decisions that may not be popular, but it's the right decision. And then like I said, you have to be, like I said, open to the collaboration, and then kind of understanding if you have some of the technical acumen, like you understand the technical aspects of what they're trying to do. That's very helpful. I think it's not for everyone, to be fair, because like I said, in any given day you may have 10 different sponsors screaming at you, or you may have 10 different sponsors praising you and telling, in terms of thanking you for what you're doing to help them get their product to market. Once they get approval and we've gone through that process, it's building that relationship. It's the relationship management piece of it that's really key.
Mm. Who do you see as your main stakeholders within the business?
So clinical operations is a main stakeholder. We have what we call patient advisory services, which is a lot of our internal trial sites and certainly some registries. And then of course the laboratory aspects of it. So we have 3 different labs from an analytical services division. So those are my main stakeholders. But I also have a lot of, like I said, the way Thermo Fisher is set up, we within our sector, we have pharmaceutical services group as well as clinical research. Pharmaceutical services is more manufacturing. So,
Yeah.
those are the manufacturers of the IMPD, manufacturers of commercial product. So those are some of my stakeholders as well. But of course, that's internal. And then external, of course, you have sponsors and certainly regulatory authorities on a regular basis.
You mentioned the company vision there earlier, and working with the leadership team, the exec team, to sort of make sure that that vision is being communicated and stuff. How do you go about bringing it back to quality? Do you have a vision specifically for your quality organization? And if so, how do you link that to the bigger picture organization vision?
Well, I think it's, the quality vision is pretty much aligned with that 2030 vision of the enterprise, which is basically we're the enablers of science to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. So from a healthier standpoint, you think about, like you say, all the therapies that you're bringing to bear to save patients' lives, or to increase the quality of their life, or to extend their life, especially if it's an oncology drug. And in bringing it back to quality is that, you're doing that in a manner where, the oversight's there in terms of the clinical trial that, we followed the protocol. We've done all the things that we're expected to do. We're, aligned with what the regulations require us to do. Same thing in the laboratory, in terms of the data that we're providing. And of course, like I said, the data management piece of it is that's your key commodity. It's like the data is what you're providing to that sponsor in the end, so that they can certainly present their filing and,
Yeah, yeah.
for approval. So when you bring it back to quality, is making sure that, if there are events that happen, they're addressed. If there we have a risk identification and mitigation system in place so that we can sort of proactively try to identify those and not wait till a catastrophe happens. But if a catastrophe does happen, there's a way to address it and to resolve it in such a way that, along with the sponsor, so that it's satisfactory.
Let's just talk about, I guess, the people side of things. And we spoke about your style as a leader. How have you had to come in and make personnel changes? How have you gone about sort of building your leadership team and the wider quality organization?
So there were some leadership changes made, within our organization. Just like I said, because of the nature of the business and the vision that we have in the terms we need to do, we want to make sure you have the right skill sets. Like, doing an assessment is that what are the critical skills that we need in
Hmm.
order to fulfill this vision?
Yeah.
What talent do we need? And I'm happy to say there's a lot of talent that was within that we were able to promote from within in terms of identifying talent further down in the organization who certainly aspired to do something more, but also had the skill sets, the talent, and then we were helping them with their development to reach those goals. So there were some leadership changes, but there's always that balance of, do we, hire externally or do we develop internally? And I think, my preference is certainly to develop internally, but understanding the marching orders and what the roadmap is saying, sometimes it calls for some skills that, we may not find internally. But in an organization of 120,000 plus individuals, we were able to identify some people that could certainly, answer the call.
Are there any particular skill sets within your world that you think that are hard to find, that you might struggle with, that you think will, these skill sets are really difficult?
The biggest thing now, Hamish, is digital strategy and understanding the governance around how we use AI in a regulated environment. Because that's, to me, I mean, it's here. It's not going anywhere. We put in some processes and some trainings and things like that, but we definitely need, people who can understand that AI is a tool, and how do we harness the power of that to get the ideal result. It's not going to do the work for you. You still need to have the human in the loop, if you will, to make the
Yeah, yeah.
decisions. But if you can use AI to, like, do a lot of the data gathering, do some of the initial assessments, but making sure that you can get to an informed decision quicker. That's what we need. We need people who are not afraid of that. There are a lot of people who are afraid that AI is going to take their job. I don't think that's the case. I think if people who don't use the tool and adopt it in such a way where they can, you can use it as your personal assistant. It can be your personal, thought partner, if you will,
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
the ultimate brainstormer for different problems. I think that's what people need to use it. But looking for people with those skills, that flex, that innovative sort of style where they can sort of adopt these tools and really apply them usefully.
And are you talking from a sort of a quality lens? Like, for example, have you had specific positions linking quality and digital AI together?
We do. We did. We just really brought someone on board that that's pretty much their remit, is looking at from the system standpoint, and how we utilize AI, and other digital tools in terms of, in our regulated environment, whether we're talking about document management, whether we're talking about, you know monitoring, whether we're talking about, the trial master file. whatever, in our entire operation.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, do you think the talent landscape, what should young quality professionals now, should they be really immersing themselves within AI and learning these tools now?
I do. I think they should be. I think they should. Like I said, being able to utilize it in such a way that you can bring it to bear in terms of that. But there's got to be a lot of like the governance of it in terms of, like I said, using it in a regulated environment. I mean, use AI now to, you know, collate their emails or get their calendars in session. But I think you need to be able to understand how to use AI in a regulated environment. Like, as quality departments with, clean operations, how are we using that in terms of like site selection? How are we using that in terms of, study startups? How are we using that in terms of protocol creation? Looking at it, in data management. So quality professionals now would need to be able to, understand how it's being used, but then making sure that it's used appropriately.
Have you done anything to advance your knowledge in that space? How have you gained exposure to AI? Is it trial and error? Have you done courses? How have you learned it?
So later last year, Thermo Fisher announced a huge partnership with OpenAI. So everyone within Thermo Fisher has access to OpenAI within the Thermo Fisher environment. So for me, every day school day. I'm learning something about it every day. I use it every day.
Yeah.
Just to in different aspects in terms of, like I said, data gathering. We're also looking at it now in terms of quality event management. As you're looking at deviations, one of the big things from a data gathering standpoint is like recurrences. How often has this recurred? And, trying to find all that information where, it may take you a couple days to do that. AI can do it in, a couple minutes. And you can be able to understand, well, it happened here, it happened here, it happened here. Here's what was done, and come up with a definitive corrective action, and get to what really caused the problem. So I use it
Yeah.
on a daily basis. I refer to it every day. Outside of the quality, just looking at it from a competitive standpoint in terms of what are our competitors doing? What are our competitors doing in terms of in the quality space and in quality regulatory space, or what are they doing in terms of business? So AI can certainly help with that as well.
So looking ahead now, Valerie, into 2026, you're sort of optimistic about the wider pharma biotech industry. Lots of stuff happening with AI and digital, hopefully making processes more efficient and speeding things up and supporting your customers in new ways. What are your, and you don't have to go into detail, but sort of high level goals wise for you and your quality organization? What are the key things front of mind?
Certainly, with the patient centric and customer focus in terms of
Hmm.
quality, continuing to be in that trusted partner, looking at it, as good stewards of, from a financial and a cost perspective, understanding that, we being mindful of where we're spending our money and what we're spending our money on. Certainly looking at some of the things in equality, because we're in a contract organization from a revenue generating perspective. What are some of those things that we can offer in quality that are revenue generating? And then of course the environment and sustainability piece of it too, in terms of, because EH&S does report into me in terms of, what are we doing from a sustainability standpoint? How are we lessening our footprint? And then
Mm.
we have something we call capital deployment in terms of, there's Thermo Fisher had quite a few acquisitions, and CRG is no stranger to that. We just acquired a company, it was public, Clario. So we're looking at, how do we integrate them very effectively from a quality perspective, and some of the things that we're doing, where the similarities, where are the gaps, and how do we, make that as efficient and seamless going forward so that we can easily capitalize on the businesses that they bring to bear, the
Yeah.
patient outcomes, the digital imaging, and the physiology.
Yeah. Do you think that the whole notion of speed versus compliance is just even more of a hot topic as so many more advancements coming into the industry, and quality is still very much still important. It's the most important thing, but there's also this pressure for businesses to get product to market quicker.
Exactly. Yeah. Speed and quality to me, it's not speed versus quality. I think it's speed and quality. I think if you put quality in at the beginning, where we talk about quality by design, where you're really integrating quality from the very beginning, like I said, in terms of, just some of the aspects of the contract that we're doing, the protocol creation, looking at, how we went about study startup. If there's quality there from the beginning, I think you can speed things along. If you kind of go without that and want to just start getting things done, we cut corners, we you know skip steps, and then of course there are quality issues that happen at the end. So I think one of the things that we're seeing in the industry, not just within our own organization but throughout the industry, is that there's a big focus on quality. And it's not about quality assurance. Like I said, quality assurance is more your risk identification, mitigation strategies, and that, but looking at the quality of delivery and performance, and how do we make sure that that's embedded from the very beginning, so that you don't have a lot of big headaches at the end that, like you said, that going to cost you more, because it's very costly to redo something, or to have something delayed. And then secondly, you may not be the first to market, and you're going to miss out on that particular aspect.
And just final point on, I suppose, this year, like when you look ahead, you've said your goals and your objectives, but what do you see as the challenges? What's keeping you up at night in terms of you achieving these objectives?
Oh wow, lots keeps me up at night. I think it's making sure that we have the talent in the organization to really be able to deliver on a lot of these things. There's a lot of changes that are happening in the regulatory space. Things are changing every day in terms of what the requirements are. So I think that's one. The other is just the complexity of some of these trials now, because some of the therapies that are coming out, they're becoming more complex. It's great, because they're definitely looking at maybe even some rare disease indications, or some things that are hard to treat. But the complexity of that, takes a certain skill set, and certain focus of the organization. And then, like I said, it's just the movement, the dynamics of the markets, and making sure that we're agile enough to be able to, like I said, continue to move at the speed of business.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I wish you all the luck for this year. It's an exciting time for the industry after a very challenging few years. So, hopefully, it's going to be a positive one. And best of luck with what you're building. Valerie, I usually end this with a couple of quick fire questions, just to throw at you. So, if you were to speak to Valerie, in her early days of her career, just in the lab, stepping into a career, what advice would you give her?
If I were to speak to her in the early days when she was in the lab,
Yeah,
um, hmm, I would have told her, don't be so wary about, joining the quality organization, just to understand that, you do have a knack for problem solving. I mean, to be fair, like I said, I was happy doing what I was doing, doing some of the analysis for some of the government contracts we had, like with Walter Reed, and certainly with the NIH. I would tell her that don't be afraid to take on those challenges, in quality, because yeah, in that days, quality was more thought of as they were the enemy.
yeah, yeah. It's funny how that shift has changed over the narrative has changed over the years, for the better. But right, final question: what one piece of advice would you give to aspiring quality leaders?
I would tell them just to be open minded. Understand that quality is considered a trusted partner, and not not someone to be avoided. And I think that someone who's aspiring to do that, they need to understand that it's not about you telling people what they should be doing, but you understanding what they do and how you can help them do it better.
Awesome, Valerie. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we got the time to do this podcast. I've really enjoyed
Thank
it,
you
and
so much.
no problem at all. I appreciate you giving me your time, and yeah, best of luck with everything that you do this year with Thermo.
Same to you. Have a wonderful 2026, Hamish. All right. Take
And
care.